everywhere I go, I see his face. I just really miss him.
Yeah, I miss him too. I don't think Tony would have done what he did if he didn't know that you were going to be here after he was gone.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Film Seizure at the Movies. I am Geoff Arbuckle. This week I'm going to talk about the new Marvel film, Spider-Man Far From Home. Before I get to that, do a little bit of housekeeping. Of course, you can always find new episodes of Film Seizure with myself and Jason Oliver every Wednesday afternoon at filmseizure.com. We also upload our episodes to iTunes, which will probably eventually become Apple Podcasts, I believe. Question mark on that because I'm not exactly sure when all of that's happening. But we're also uploading our episodes to Google Play. They have a podcast section there in the Google Music. And TuneIn as well as Spotify. We also upload our episodes to YouTube. So if that's how you like to listen to stuff, we'll be there as well. Now, about a week ago, I had released a special edition episode of Film Seizure at filmseizure.com about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it's kind of closing the book on one stage of their history and beginning to open up a new chapter, if you will, with this new movie, Spider-Man Far From Home. And in that, I had kind of made a little bit of a prediction that it seemed as though from the previews and the various things that we have seen from Far From Home, that it really kind of basically seemed as though there was some concerted effort at the very least to try to move somebody new into that role that's being left behind by Tony Stark passing away and dying, saving everybody at the end of Avengers Endgame. So almost as if while in continuity and in the movies themselves, it was really Captain America who was the leader of the Avengers, but the figurehead and certainly the leader in terms of the Marvel Universe as a kind of, what's the word I'm looking for there? In the real world sense, we kind of looked at Robert Downey Jr. as being kind of the leader, the person who, spoke for Marvel, kind of was the figurehead and the face of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that, so while on one end of the spectrum, you have the characters in the movies themselves trying to figure out where they're headed from there, with Iron Man's passing. And in the real world, we're looking at, well, what comes next? Where do we go from here? Because obviously we had the big crescendo up to Endgame that took place over a course of 22 films. And with this 23rd film, was it going to be a new beginning or not? Well, my prediction was that technically, yes, this would be the new beginning. However, I will gladly say that I'm kind of wrong in that. This movie is really kind of thought of to be a follow-up to Endgame. It's not really the beginning of the next phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it's really more of the more like an epilogue to the 22 previous films. It's an epilogue kind of closing some doors as far as what had happened before, kind of what the aftermath of Tony Stark's sacrifice and everything that took place between the Infinity War and Endgame. People, as they called, blip out. And then when they returned and what was going on in the world as they returned. It's so there is a little bit of follow-up, kind of help to explain some of like, well, what really did happen when people disappeared and what really happened when they came back. There's some kind of funny scenes with that right at the beginning of the movie. However, this really is more of an epilogue. It does prepare you for what's coming next. It certainly does not seem to build heavily upon the idea of there being another major threat necessarily. It's kind of while the universe is wide open now, everybody knows that there's stuff out there, more stuff coming. We have to be vigilant. We have to stay guarding. We have to, we have to stay on the wall and guard Earth and everything like that. The stuff like that's mentioned. However, it really is kind of a smaller story. I think what we're going to see, and this was something else I made mention in that special episode last week, that I think we're going to see smaller stories for a little bit. I think they're going to take their time to build up to the next major threat. Now, there are major threats. Absolutely, there are major threats. There are things that happen in this movie that forces people to ask questions about what is happening, where we fit into it, and how we protect ourselves. There are questions about a larger sense of what's out there in the universe, or is there a multiverse? We do get questions. I mean, it is mentioned in the trailers that this Quentin Beck character, who is the Mysterio character that Jake Gyllenhaal plays, he is from a multiverse, from a different Earth. It's the first time ever that Earth is referred to as Earth 616. The 616 universe is the primary universe in Marvel Comics. It's where everything happens. And so, there is a discussion. Peter even kind of blurts out some stuff scientifically about the idea of what a multiverse would mean, and what theories it would follow, and so on and so forth. So there's some interesting questions asked in this movie, but this is 100% a Spider-Man movie. It's not a piece of a larger puzzle. It's not like, oh, Spider-Man has to do this so that he can so that it stops another thing that's happening in Captain Marvel's movie, so that she can do something that stops something in Black Panther's movie, and so on and so forth. This is, while there's a lot of discussion of other heroes, of other things going on, through and through, this is about Spider-Man, and certainly about Peter Parker having to move on from losing his mentor and the person that he kind of saw as a father figure in Tony Stark. There are some really good kind of fun moments with some various side characters, particularly Happy Hogan, Jon Favreau returning to that role again, working very closely with Peter. Some of his classmates. There's some fun little stories there that really kind of help kind of flush out his universe, his corner of the Marvel universe, that is. So yes, this is a movie that is small, yet it feels like it's expanding, it's growing, it's part of something as a whole, but it doesn't necessarily have to worry about the other stuff that's going on as a whole. Generally speaking, I really did like this movie. It's very fun. Is it one of the very best Marvel movies? No. I look at this as kind of like Captain Marvel. Middle of the road, very entertaining, good for some chuckles, good for some excitement, some good action scenes. Seeing Spider-Man become more and more confident as the movie goes on. There's a wonderful scene late in the movie that pretty much opens up the third act of the movie, where Happy goes to get Peter, who's been kind of left in, I think he's left in the Netherlands, and he needs to be picked up. And when Happy comes in this really cool jet with a bunch of Stark tech in it, you see Peter like piecing together a new suit. You see Happy looking at him as if he's watching a young Tony Stark kind of emerge from that. So there's some really cool scenes that deal with that. There's some exceptionally cute scenes with Ned, who is Peter's friend in these two movies, and his new girlfriend, Betty. Betty Brant, of course, is a big Spider-Man character over the years. There's some really cute scenes with Peter and MJ in this. It's a very fun movie. Most importantly, it feels like a comic book. It doesn't go out of its way to stylize itself like a comic book, like some movies often do, but it does seem to kind of go out of its way to have a fun feeling. Spider-Man is meant to be a fun character. He's meant to be an everyman. So we should want to see ourselves in his shoes. And it's really fun to see that. And you see him grapple with his responsibility and with his duty, and what his, and you see him struggle with that in contrast to what he wants personally. These are all very Spider-Man things. These are things that have been part of the comic book since he first appeared back in 1962. So it's fun to kind of see those things again and kind of play out. It's not quite as mopey as the Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, even though I think those are great fun in their own right. It's not as dark, I guess, as the Amazing Spider-Man series was, but this one feels more like a Spider-Man movie than the previous Spider-Man movie, where we were just kind of seeing Peter in his element, and getting advice and help from Tony Stark. But here, this is his movie. He's growing. He is proving himself as a hero, and he's proving himself as somebody who deserved the trust and attention that Tony Stark gave him, and is earning some respect, or at least some attention from Shield, and from in particular Nick Fury. That's another thing I want to talk about. Nick Fury and Agent Hill in this movie. They're in it. There's some pretty good scenes there where they're working with Quentin Beck, Jake Gyllenhaal, which I'll talk about here in just a minute too. And there's some reactions that Samuel L. Jackson has to things that Jake Gyllenhaal is telling him that are just comedic gold. One in particular, I think everybody will know it when it happens in the movie, but it's really good. And the interaction between characters are really good. And the pressure that Nick Fury is putting on to Peter to prove himself. You're supposed to be this guy that Tony Stark says is the best of us, or the next best of us. You're the one who's supposed to kind of pick up the baton and carry it as the leader now. Prove it to me. You're acting like a kid. You're not doing things the right way. So it's fun interactions and stuff like that you're seeing. So Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, he is fantastic in this role. Quentin Beck is a little bit of a Tony Stark like character. He's also he does something that I think Jake Gyllenhaal does very well, which is switch between serious and playful very easily by just a particular look that he gives, or a particular way that he says a line. He very much is what you should expect if you're a comic book reader, if you're a fan of Amazing Spider-Man and a fan of the Mysterio character. I think you'll be pretty pleased with what Jake Gyllenhaal brings. I don't want to give away any spoilers because there are some pretty big ones, but I will say watch for the mid-credit scene. If you have to go to the bathroom, try to wait until after that. Or if you can really get in and out really quickly in the first part of the credits, do so. But there is a phenomenal mid-credit scene that is, everything's coming up Peter except when it doesn't. And it's a very Spider-Man moment. It's a very classic Peter Parker moment. And I think you'll really appreciate it. Plus, the cameo that's made in that is phenomenal. I really like this movie. I don't want to call it one of the very, very best, but it is extremely likable. It's one of those movies that you can just have a good time watching. Everything is very intricate, but also very clear in what the point is and what the movie's trying to get you on board with. It does cover the idea of who is going to fill the shoes, the very large Iron Man shoes of Tony Stark in the Marvel Universe. Who's going to be that person who is willing to sacrifice everything for the right thing? And, you're going to see this, I think, play out in several movies over time. there has been no, as of this date, July, whatever it is, 3rd that I'm recording this, there's been no word of what the next Marvel movie is. There's 2 or 3 Marvel movies coming out next year. We don't know what they are. We don't know what direction they've been working towards. We don't know what they've been doing right now. It's been very hush-hush, but it should be, I suspect we're going to see a Black Panther movie. I suspect we'll see a Captain Marvel movie before long. I suspect another Guardians movie will come. There will be a continuation from some of the themes in this movie, in those movies, but affecting those people on an individual character by character basis. The idea of Stark's sacrificed for the greater good, and who is going to step up to do the things that he would have done in his time as a hero, and who's going to ultimately be able to stand up and say, even if this cost me my life or everything I hold dear, I have to do this for the greater good of everyone. And I think that's going to be something that will repeat with each subsequent movie that comes out. So look for that in future Marvel movies. 100% go see this movie. I don't think there's any way you can say, oh, you know what, skip that Marvel movie. Marvel fans are going to go see the movies regardless. For some people, this is going to touch them very deeply. I think younger fans will now be able to kind of wrap their arms around Peter Parker as the future of the Marvel universe. Those of us who are a little bit older, who were a little bit older when the first Iron Man movie came out, I think we will be, kind of feeling the same way as some of the older characters in this movie, particularly like Happy and Nick Fury. We want to know who that next character is, and we want to see them grow, and we want to see them step up into that role. And I think we're going to get that in the long and short of it. Anyway, again, definitely check out this movie. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. It's, like I said, it's a middle of the road in the sense of the 23 Marvel movies. It pretty much sits right in the middle, but it's super fun. I liked it more than the first Spider-Man, which I liked that movie too. Again, as I had mentioned last week in that special episode of Film Seizure, it's hard to really say that even if a movie was just kind of middle of the road in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or it's one of the weaker entries, that still means it's a pretty good movie. But this is not a huge event movie like the Avengers movies are. This ultimately tells a very personal story, and it talks about how Peter is desperate to find that new mentor and to trust somebody to help him through his growing pains. And it's, and how he ultimately has to kind of rely on his own abilities and his own talents as not only as the incredibly intelligent Peter Parker, but the incredibly powerful, amazing Spider-Man, if you will. So that's basically how I feel. I don't want to give away any. There's so many things I want to talk about, but I don't want to give away any spoilers. But I think you'll definitely like some of the stuff that's going to be in there that definitely would be spoilerish. But it's a fun movie. It is everything that I would want a Spider-Man movie to really be. Is it my favorite Spider-Man movie? No. Even though they kind of get, there's been some contemporary reviews that have not been so kind to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy. Spider-Man 2 is still my favorite, but this is definitely a pretty good Spider-Man entry, and it certainly fits a lot of characterization and a lot of and a lot of the greater themes too, and how it fits into the Marvel universe, even if it is its own little portion. I think this definitely will set the tone for what Spider-Man movies will be going forward too, which is good to see. Every single hero kind of has their own tone of what their movies are. Now Spider-Man has his tone set, and it should be a lot of fun. All right. So, like I was saying, you can catch new episodes of Film Seizure every Wednesday, filmseizure.com. Check us out on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and TuneIn. You can also catch new episodes of Monster Mondays every Monday with myself. I talk about a monster movie every week, so those should be pretty fun, particularly if you like old monster movies, whether it's Godzilla, Dracula, Frankenstein. Eventually I'll get to some Gamera. I like to kind of throw in some different ideas of a monster, almost more like boogeymen, or topics that would almost create something like that. Because I've talked about witches and stuff like that, or I've done episodes for that are coming out this month. Also, go over to bmovieenema.com every Friday. That's where I release articles about, well, mostly B movies, whether they're good or bad or just mind-blowing, if you will. But you can check that out. Until next time, be sure to save me the aisle seat.
MJ, I
am Spider-Man.
No, of course I'm not.
I mean, it's kind of obvious.